Beautiful. To the cloud, yeah, it's
Okay,
recorded to the
just got a
cloud,
note from Andrew.
and then they somehow download it, move it to YouTube.
He's like,
That's a, we could start.
yeah, for sure.
If he's showing, he's
He's
canceled
coming.
twice, so it's weird.
Yeah.
Or rescheduled, I should say.
Okay. Are we recording?
We are recording.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Tonight, the Town of New Canaan's Charter Revision Commission is meeting here at the boardroom at Town Hall and via Zoom. It's Tuesday, March 3rd, and it's 5 p.m. And I'm going to turn it to our secretary, Commissioner Jameson, to call the roll.
Thank you. Mr. Case
Here.
via Zoom. Miss Corbett,
Here.
Miss Holm. Here. Miss Jameson, present. Mr. Kimes.
Present.
Mr. Lampert. No.
Mr.
Mr. Labrie.
Here.
Miss Neville.
Here.
Mr. Pallo.
Here.
Mr. Perrette.
Present.
Miss Willett.
Here.
So the only person absent at the moment is Mr. Lampert.
Okay, very good. I haven't heard from him otherwise. So we're going to stick with the agenda. However, if we come up to item number 4, and if Andrew's not here, we'll go to the next, and we'll just have a vote to change the agenda. So let's turn to the minutes, and for the meeting held February 24th, a special meeting. I just had one comment.
Yes, I'm sorry. I apologize. I misspelt Miss Holm's name.
Yes.
Oh,
You didn't even catch that, Jen, right?
No, I didn't even read the minutes.
Oh, okay.
Should admit that. So that will be corrected.
Any other comments on the minutes for the special meeting of February 24th?
I make a motion, we accept them.
Second?
My second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And just,
Aye.
Thank you. And Karen's on line. So it was Bill Perrette made a motion, Joe Pallo seconded. All those in favor said aye. Okay, great.
Lane, could I ask a question on the minutes?
Steve.
Just, it isn't an edit, but where is the folder, the Master Commission Draft Report Document report folder? There's it on the website. There is something, but it isn't the report folder.
Yes, if you go to newcanaan.info, if you go to government and you go to the commission, and then you go to the section that says agendas, notices, et cetera, click on that. That takes you to something called Documents on Demand.
Mhm.
And there's a list of items, including agendas, and there's and minutes, and there's a section that says draft reports. You see that folder?
Yes,
And
for sure.
It's in there.
Okay. I'll just have to play with it. It just had what we had before. It isn't.
Yes, we have
isn't
it. If we go through and we edit, we're going to post some changes for the
Okay.
next one. Yes.
And it comes up and when you post. the-
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we don't have
Yes.
to vote.
A question for those online. Scott's note taker. There's no one named Scott. So who's got the AI reading note taker? And the second question is, are you okay with an AI note taking thing for the being logged into Zoom? It doesn't match any of the participants' names.
And that isn't what you just clicked. I saw you click. on-
Yeah, that was the one that appeared, and I want to verify it, whether that's something that's legit or not. So
I could just ask Karen, are you taking notes at all? Is that where you're under? No, she's separate.
okay, so I'm going to remove it.
Yeah. Okay.
We generally tend to remove.
Okay.
Have we had that on before?
Yeah, I've seen other ones. So our fire chief uses it, read.ai. It can be helpful, but I just wanted to verify because it didn't match any of the other participant names.
Okay.
Sorry, ma'am, that was all.
That's okay. All right, let's move on to public comments then. Members of the public are welcome to speak to the Charter Revision Commission on agenda topics scheduled for review and or vote. And I believe we have 2 members. I'll go first to John Amaryllis, who's joined us first. Please come up.
You want to speak from here?
Yes, please.
Yeah,
Okay.
and John has provided some papers for us.
Oh, okay.
May I distribute those?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
These are not in lieu of what you.
No,
There we go. Up. Around.
I was uncertain as to how much time I would be given here, so I thought
We
I'd
like to,
be a little
well,
more.
we've got a full agenda, but we don't have our next speaker here. So why don't you get up to 5 minutes? How's
All
that,
right.
John?
Thank you.
There were 3 provisions of the charter which I addressed. The first one is C2-1, and it's the composition of the Office of Selectmen. And I feel that the number of selectmen should be increased from the current 3 to 5, 7 or more in order to encourage and foster further debate and to give all the parties a greater opportunity to discuss matters within a caucus. The current system basically it's a 2-to-1 situation, which basically leaves one person to fend for themselves. And I don't think it generates an atmosphere or fosters an atmosphere of debate. So I think the town would be better served with more members on the Board of Selectmen rather than the 3 currently existing. The second point I make is on C2-8, which basically deals with the removal of appointed members. I think that section should be amended as to allow removal or recall of elected officials as well as appointed members. Now, obviously, there should be a significant threshold in order to accomplish this so that it's not an ongoing fight every time someone gets elected. But should an elected official be guilty of some form of malfeasance, criminal activity, instability, whatever it is, I mean, if there is a legitimate bona fide cause to remove an elected official, there should be a mechanism by which the town can do that. Currently, that does not exist, and I think that should be added to the town charter. Again, the threshold would have to be determined by this committee or by referendum or what have you, but it should be 10, 15% of the townspeople who basically sign a petition, and then we go into a referendum. Lastly, I want to address C5-25, which deals with the foreclosure of tax liens or similar issues. And this comes up as a result of a very sad situation which arose recently. I think that if you have a person, an individual, not a corporate entity, an LLC or a trust, but an individual whose house is becoming a topic of foreclosure by the town for tax purposes, then the matter should be referred to the health department or to some other agency which basically can make a determination as to the fitness of the individual to understand what's going on. And once that body makes the determination, if it is positive, or let's say it's they can't decide for themselves, the matter should be referred to probate court before any action is further taken. Again, I want to stress this. This is not to protect, some, well-heeled exploiter, okay? The issue here is if we have someone who's frail or incompetent or for whatever reason, we should determine whether that's the pre-existing condition, and then the matter should be referred in the manner that I outlined here. So those are 3 matters that I think would make the town a more humane place to reside in. Those are my comments.
Any comments or questions?
Very thoughtful comments, thank you. The second point, C2-8, could you say a little bit more about that, the removal of an elected official, sort of, what do you, just an interesting point, I'm trying to understand it.
Well, you'd have to determine, you'd have to enumerate legitimate reasons for the removal of an elected official. Let's say they're an Epstein friend who has been hanging out, okay? Or something of a similar ilk, or whatever you could determine, listen, they violated a statute, which is a felony or whatever it might be. It'd be up to this committee, I presume, to determine the severity of the cause that would give rise to a recall. It could be corrupting it could be whatever it is, okay? This I left blank because really it would be up to this committee to make a determination as to what would determine the cause for this kind of a recall.
We currently have, I mean, I'm,
Yeah, so what John is pointing to, I think, is section C2-8, removal from office. And correct me if I've got this wrong, but right now there is an ability by unanimous vote of the Board of Selectmen to remove any member of a board or commission or committee
Right,
for cause. And we don't have that for elected.
correct. There should be a subparagraph to that particular provision.
yeah, so the, yeah, no, I understand the point.
Yeah.
You have to have a process even for appointed, which we do have,
Yeah.
but I understand elected, yeah.
There's no reference to elected right now. Okay, Joe.
That would add a little bit of conundrum because the selectmen are elected and they're the ones making the decision. So there would need to be a process that would cover the selectmen too.
Yeah, so here, I'm sorry. Sure, Jennifer Home. So I had actually done a little research on this. And what I found was that there was also a dual process where a person could be asked to be removed and then had a hearing in front of the town council, which is a separate entity sometimes too, as well as the Board of Selectmen, to then get a vote, to basically then have a concurrent vote. Have you looked at any other, that's in a couple of charters,
For
remember?
appointed or elected or both?
Both. Yeah.
My concern would be that the way I envisioned it here was that you would have a groundswell. The townsfolk would basically sign a petition.
Mhm.
The petition would have to be signed by X percentage of the votaries that are out there. And then basically, if the petition exceeds that threshold, that it would then basically come up to a,
Trigger a removal process?
well, it would trigger a referendum.
Oh, a
A
referendum.
vote.
Absolutely.
Of the residents.
Of the
Is what you're
residents.
saying, not just the town bodies.
No. The residents
That's
would
what I
have to, but that's why I'm saying you'd have to
Mhm.
lift that threshold to a reasonable level so that, it's not turning into a political game. Every year you have another removal proposal. But if it reached a certain threshold and the people in town signed enough people signed the petition, and then basically it went to a referendum, the people have spoken. Just like they were voted them in, they vote them out.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got what you're asking for.
Thank
We
you.
don't have that for health reasons. I wonder if that should be incorporated as well.
Check it, Mike.
It's just a thought. I mean, because they had two towns that had to deal with, we dealt with it way long time ago, 25 years.
Well,
30
let's
30 years.
explore this.
We
I think
ought to
let's
look
see it.
into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, John,
Okay.
for raising. Anybody else for John? No?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just a comment that the general statutes of Connecticut don't have recall provision. It's delegated to the town, so it's
Mhm.
appropriate that you would bring this up
Mhm.
for consideration. Because
That's a good point.
there's nobody else
Mechanism.
that gives us any direction.
Thank you.
All right.
Yes, Angela.
John, do you consider that it could become a political football quite easily if we had this kind of provision in the town charter? I mean, we've seen it at other levels in some states at the federal level.
Like I said, this is the threshold
Hmm.
required to attain that would have to be a significant one.
electorate.
So the situation would not be 5% of the votaries can come out and basically do this, okay? The petition would have to be a significant percentage, which in your wisdom here, you'd have to set a threshold.
Are you considering if a person was accused or if a person was convicted? Where would that, because it's convicted is one level as opposed to accused.
We'll look into that.
Yeah,
We'll look into
again, this is again within your
Suggestion
purview.
we'll look into.
Yeah.
Chris.
Yeah, could we use the existing referendum metrics?
I believe you could.
Yeah, okay.
The issue with the,
Right, yeah.
with someone being accused as opposed to
And
being
that's a
convicted.
very high bar.
What was
I mean,
your,
to get the ball rolling is small, but to get it, to really get a referendum, you need a whole bunch of people.
I believe that would be basically weed it
And
out.
that would be,
But
that
there's-
would rule out, political mischief.
Agreed.
Okay, did anybody, Steve, are you okay? Any questions? No, he's all set. Okay.
Thank you very
John.
much.
We appreciate
All right.
it. Thank you for your
Yeah,
thoughts.
Thanks,
on this.
John.
Have anybody else, Roy, you're going to be speaking? No, you're done. Oh, are you speaking or no? Oh, you are. Please,
Okay.
please come.
Do this book.
Okay, just be mindful of time, right? Okay.
Hi, Roy Abramowitz, Canaan resident, 29 years, getting old. Okay. I'm speaking about the treasurer's
Thank you.
position. I don't understand why our first select woman has a desire to move backwards and have a totally autocratic government, especially in our financial function. Under CT General Statutes, Section 9-189, it defaults to electing a town treasurer. 102 municipalities elect. 67 smaller towns appoint. And why do they appoint? Because what it said was it's due to lack of finding qualified candidates in a smaller town. That problem definitely doesn't exist in New Canaan. Appointed would defer to a conflict of interest, lack of segregation of duties, and defer to the interests of the town CEO rather than New Canaan's constituency. The Rose Institute on State and Local Governments notes that electing local officials discourages bureaucratic cronyism while also ensuring that elected officials are adopting the needs and concerns of voters. New Canaan just lost its audit committee chair due to bureaucratic cronyism because of the first selectman deferring to the interest of the town CEO over the concern of voters and the audit committee. By blocking release of a taxpayer-funded independent internal audit, which audit cited procurement internal control deficiencies, lacks a segregation of duties. These same deficiencies were missed by the town's outside independent auditors for decades. For example, just this morning, the Board of Selectmen approved the seal by an elected selectman to the Parks and Recs Department of a Chevy 3500 HD in the amount of $78,000 plus a trade-in without the required competitive bidding. In 2020, Nick Williams and Kevin Moynihan passed a statute that was accepted on procurement that said if on a $50,000 or more purchase, you need at least 3 competitive bids. We're totally ignoring that. Okay. So this action is unethical and it's self-enrichment by an elected official. Filling out an ethics disclosure with the town clerk is a joke. This self-enrichment has been prevalent and unchallenged for decades and costly to the town. The same official appoints and approves members of the Board of Finance and the Audit Committee. We cannot also have this scenario appoint our treasurer. Our financial function must remain independent of an autocratic government, the current override of internal controls, the override of segregation and duties, and insufficient procurement procedures that should be heard in the report from independent internal auditors if it ever is properly presented to the town council. In conclusion, our treasurer must remain independent of the executive branch and answer to the electorate. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Roy. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, thanks.
Appreciate it.
Any questions?
You said CEO, did you mean CEO or CFO?
What does the town have, a CFO or CFO?
CFO, we don't have a,
We have a chief elected official, so
Yeah, yeah.
technically we.
CFO,
CFO,
the
that's
head of the
financial.
financial function. Sorry, and I write this.
I
quick.
figured that's what it was.
Does anyone, do I have to turn in my written?
I think we captured them when we're taping it, so we
Oh,
got
okay.
it. Thank you, though. We're all
All right,
set.
thanks a
Thank
lot.
you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to item number 4, the town treasurer role. And Andrew Brooks, who currently serves as our elected town treasurer, is here to discuss his roles, responsibilities via the charter, state statute, and also welcome to provide us with any other charter input that you might. And just, we're going to be mindful of the time. Can you think you can cover what you want to cover in 10 minutes?
If
Let's
I
try.
can,
Let's try.
yeah, we can
We
try.
gave other officers.
Yeah, no, let's try.
Half hour to an
Let's
hour.
try.
I think the gentleman
Yeah,
should be given
of course.
reasonable amount of time.
Of course.
Well, and I'm happy to come as well to group 2, because I know
Yes.
you met with the CFO for about 90 minutes. So I'm happy to go
Yeah,
kind of
for
deep
us,
into the
We
details of
just have a
the
lot of stuff to
language.
cover too, so we're just trying to manage it.
Please.
But go ahead, Andrew, you know what. Go ahead.
Sure. So I've got some prepared remarks. I may speak a little bit off the cuff, but also happy to answer all your questions at the end. So I'm Andrew Brooks, for those of you who don't know me. I think I know pretty much everyone at this table and online. But I'm here tonight because I truly love this town, and I care deeply about protecting taxpayer dollars and maintaining checks and balances in local government. That's really my guiding principle in everything that I do. So let me just share a little bit about me. I've been elected 7 times as town treasurer over the past 13 years. So I'm proud to have received over 25,000 votes cumulatively over that period. In terms of inflows and outflows of taxpayer dollars have exceeded $2 billion over that period. So it's a lot of money we're talking about that belongs really to all of us.
Are you giving us notes on this, or are you distributing something at the?
Not right now, but I may
You're going to
submit
submit it after.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, please do.
But I've had some notes. I'll clean it up and submit for the record. Absolutely. My professional experience is in financial services. I've spent 15 years working across both management consulting to the financial services industry at Deloitte and Accenture, and then also in the banking industry, including Morgan Stanley and subsidiary of Royal Bank of Canada, where I currently work. And so really one of the benefits of that is I've had one foot in the private sector, and from all my private sector learnings have been able to bring a lot of that to the public sector, especially in terms of internal controls. So let me quickly discuss what the treasurer's role entails, because I don't think a lot of people fully understand it. I know the charter currently has, I think, maybe a couple of sentences, right, and refers to state statutes. So ultimately, the treasurer is an independent watchdog and taxpayer advocate. That's how I see the role. And that's how a lot of other elected town treasurers that I've met with have seen the role. And there are really 2 primary state statutes that cover the treasurer role. One is 7-80, which talks about receiving the money belonging to the town and paying it out on the order of proper authority. And then 7-400, which talks about investing of town funds. So I say those are the 2 main statutes that I look at. There are a few other minor ones. But I think about it in terms of both managing cash and dispersing cash, where the treasurer plays a role. So I'll quickly just go through some examples of things that the treasurer does. Banking. So I led an RFP process a few years ago. IC Tucker's on the line. She was part of the committee, but the CFO was part of it. The controller at the time was part of it. Essentially assembled a team of folks from town hall, and we met with, 5 different banks that ultimately bid on our services. That took many, many hours to work through, multiple rounds of interviews. I'm also involved in both opening and closing of bank accounts. I'm a signer on all the town's accounts. And ultimately, my name is assigned to all the checks of the town and the schools. So I also get every week a listing of all the payments of the town. It's usually done on a weekly basis. They do a check run, although the check run also now includes ACH, right, electronic payments. But that's done every week. So I get a listing of all of those transactions. And then I go in, and for the less pro forma transactions like payments to construction companies for capital projects, I do a manual review of most of those transactions. So I'm going through for the police station 300-page invoices, looking at the numbers, calling up Tiger, trying to understand some of the work that was done, were the terms of the contract abided by. So again, that kind of provides an extra independent set of eyes, right? Because I'm independent from the reporting line. Everyone in town finance department reports to the CFO, who then reports to the first selectman. And I think it should also be known, no one in the town finance department, to my knowledge, is a New Canaan resident or taxpayer. So I think it's good to have someone who literally has skin in the game, looking at these expenditures, making sure that they're properly authorized. And in my time, unfortunately, I've had to push back on over $1.5 million worth of payments that otherwise would have been issued but had not been properly authorized. Right? I go back to 7-80, which talks about ensuring that payments are made on the order of proper authority. And that's really important. I know our chairman here ran for town treasurer in 2011 when that didn't happen in the case of the Lakeview Avenue Bridge arbitration. So I've certainly made it the mission of the treasurer's office to ensure that robust reviews are happening, that payments are not made that aren't properly authorized by various bodies, whether that's town council as part of the budget process or board of selectmen as part of the contracting process. And I look at the numbers from a taxpayer perspective. There have been instances where, as a taxpayer, right, I want to offset every dollar of taxes by earning that extra dollar in revenue off of our cash. And so as soon as rates started going up, I was able to negotiate higher interest rates for, and again, I'm talking about myself here, but it's really about the role, right? The nature of the role is to look out for how can we increase the revenues from our cash, right? While the CFO is more focused on the accounting and budgeting piece, right? Not necessarily thinking, can we earn more money over here or over there, right? That's where the treasurer's perspective comes in, as someone, again, who lives here and cares about the bottom line. And so I then noticed several months later that we had not been earning as much in revenue as we otherwise should have earned based on those heightened rates. And so I did an investigative project and discovered that we had been underpaid $125,000 in interest. Again, no one else in town hall noticed. Again, most of their function of the finance department is just to record the numbers as they appear in the bank statement. That's, again, where I feel the treasurer role is important, because we detected that unpaid interest. I worked with the bank to get it paid to us with interest on that interest. If they had paid us timely, we would have been earning more interest on those balances. So that's just another example where, again, I think the treasurer role plays in the mix of managing the cash of the town. The town ultimately is the treasurer is the town's chief investment officer. I make the decisions around which investments to park our cash in to earn some yield before it gets spent. So I'm paying close attention to our cash flow. When we do tax collection in January and July, how long can we hold on to that cash and invest it before we need it to be available to pay bills coming due? Now, the town years ago, and I know our chairman knows this as well, used to outsource a lot of that function to UBS for a very high dollar amount. By looking back at some older numbers, it looked like we were paying roughly $100,000 a year for that service of having a managed account with UBS where they made the investment selection for us. And it ate up a decent chunk of our earnings on those investments. So one of the things that I felt was important was the treasurer insource that activity, manage it myself, especially given the state statutes very much limit what a treasurer can invest in. I certainly can't play the stock market. There's about, I believe, like 10 to 12 different options that treasurers may choose from, a menu, if you will. And primarily we're in treasuries, CDs, other government issued securities, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac securities, although less so now because those aren't yielding very much. But over most of my tenure, we were at 0% interest rates. So, looking for yield, those were more favorable back then. But I just share that again, just to show, I guess, the division of labor within the town's finance organization and kind of how my role complements the role of others. It isn't duplicating anyone's role. So I think that's just an important point I want to mention. The treasurer is also involved in bonding. So the treasurer and the first selectman both are required to sign off on all bond issuances of the town. I think it's important that we have two independent people signing off and attesting to the accuracy of the information in that official statement, which usually is 160 plus pages long, right? And includes audited financial information, includes other representations that must be accurate for people to invest in our debt. One of the reasons I feel like why we've been able to maintain a AAA credit rating, obviously prudent, Budgeting from our finance, Board of Finance and our town council has also, of course, helped maintain a substantial fund balance, which again, I use those monies, those unassigned monies to invest and earn additional yield to offset our taxes. So again, I think signing off on bonds is important. I also review the annual comprehensive financial report that's produced. I do participate to some degree in the external audit process. I give access to the bank accounts to the external auditors. And over the years, sometimes they'll have questions. So I answer those questions. But thankfully, we have not had any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in our financial statements for a very long time now, since a prior finance director left the town. And then in terms of, I guess,
Can we just ask one
Yeah.
question? And forgive me for
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you going to be talking about bonding anymore? I just want to touch on that.
I was going to move on from bonding, but
Okay, let
we
me
can
just
talk
ask
about
on
it. Yeah.
bonding. Do you participate, does the treasurer participate in discussions with the rating agencies?
Yes. So I am on the calls with Moody's. And over the years, Moody's will ask questions and I participate in that process. Absolutely. There's a deck that gets presented. But I'm also involved in, reviewing the official statement paperwork. I select the ultimate buyer of the bonds. We do a competitive bidding process with our bond counsel and bond advisor. So they set it all up on the sale date, and then I select, and then all the documentation gets printed, and then myself and the first selectman review. At least I sit there and spend a lot of time reviewing the fine print. My mother was an attorney, so I care about reading the details and then signing off on it ultimately. And I've done a lot of bond issues at this point. So again, I think it's important that you have those two independent people signing off on the bonds. Again, dual control, I do think it's important to note, dual control is a cornerstone principle of any world-class finance organization. And I think that in town, we have that structure today, where we have two, independent reporting lines involved in overseeing the finances of the town. And when you go look at some of the material weaknesses and significant deficiencies identified in other towns, and I have taken that look, the vast majority of those in recent years have been in towns that don't have that dual control, independent line of oversight, where they don't have an elected town treasurer. So,
You got one more question?
oh, sorry.
I think he's answered it. I was just going to ask about dual controls.
Yeah. And again, as someone who works in the internal control space, I currently, I'm in the investment management governance office of my bank, where we oversee all the portfolio managers that are making investment decisions for clients. And, we've added a lot of internal controls to ensure that client interests and funds are protected, right? And I like to think that I play a similar role here. Working with our former audit committee chairman for nearly 10 years, or maybe over 10 years. I work very closely with the audit committee. I attend their meetings. I've raised and escalated issues over the years, especially back in 2016, 2017, when, again, I was being pressured to authorize payments that were not yet appropriate to make. Whether the MOUs involved, the terms had not been met, yet I was getting bullied. And again, not being a direct report of the first selectman allowed me to push back and take the punches, right? That's kind of what political world is about, unfortunately, sometimes. But I rolled with those punches, and here I am today. So I think it's important that we have someone who's able to push back and isn't going to cave under pressure or fear retaliation. I think that's a concern when you don't have that independence of the treasurer role and try to have it be part of the overall organizational chart.
Who do you think you report to?
I ultimately report to the people of the town, right? And I think as an elected official, right, I knock on doors, I engage people in the public square, I engage them in coffee shops. It's important for me to go and solicit that feedback. I don't think it would be appropriate probably for our town employees to go and knock on people's doors and solicit feedback, right? But being an elected official gives me that ability to solicit that direct feedback from the people. And some of them are uncomfortable raising concerns themselves. So I'm able to then be their conduit to talking to other elected officials and appointed officials of the town to relay that feedback, relay that information, help connect the dots. Sometimes people are uncomfortable requesting information from town hall, so they'll come to me. And they know that as an elected official, I have an obligation to be responsive to the people. If I ignore the general public, I won't last very long in this job. So again, being very responsive to the public, knocking on doors, that's part of being an elected official. And I don't really see appointed officials going knocking on doors, nor is it necessarily their duty to, but I think the onus is on you to reach out and solicit feedback.
You do that when it's not a contested?
Yeah, even when I'm not contested, I still go around. I'm often asked by other candidates, hey, will you go around with me in this neighborhood? You know, I know that you've barnstormed this area before. And so I'll go around with other candidates, sometimes just on my own, just to kind of solicit general feedback around how they feel their finances are being managed. Are they comfortable with the amount of bonded indebtedness that we have in New Canaan? Are there bigger projects that they want the town to take on that I can take the recommendation to other officials? Because as the treasurer, I don't make decisions on where to spend the money, right? The orders of where to spend the money are determined by the board, by either the Board of Selectmen in terms of signing the contracts with specific vendors, or with the town council, who ultimately make the appropriation decisions.
Chris?
Andrew, do you ever, it's interesting that this canvassing that you do, whether you're a contestant or not, how do you get that feedback to the rest of the town organization?
How do I give that feedback?
Yeah.
So usually via phone calls. I usually call other officials and relay feedback to them directly.
Do you have an example of something that you got as far as feedback? And
Lately, it's been about parking. A lot of people are upset about some of the parking decisions that are being made, and you know, especially since they don't feel it's really about revenue generation. You know, that there isn't a real, I guess, driver to do it. I know some folks have different opinions on that issue, and obviously I didn't come here to talk about that issue per se, but that's just a piece of feedback I've been getting. But I will say too, over the years, people are concerned about the level of bonded indebtedness that we have. We do have a lot of debt per capita. I know New Canaan, because we have such deep reserves, we can afford it. And especially when rates were low, we were able to capitalize on very low interest rates. I mean, I remember one of the bond issues I did had a true interest cost of like 1.6%, right? We're never going to see those rates again, or at least not for a long time. But that's where I have conversations with people, and then I'll share with the decision makers, hey, before you consider this capital project, you know, this is what I'm hearing on the street. So that's usually how I relay feedback to people.
go ahead, Angela.
So thank you, Andrew, for all that you do for the town. But could you please comment on what is so very different in the municipal realm from the corporate realm, where typically the treasurer has many of the same functions that you've just described and reports into the CFO, and it seems to work very well. That is a senior and respected position, and that individual is expected to raise his or her hand if they see an issue. What makes the municipal realm so very different, where we need to break out the role of the treasurer from the reporting line in town hall?
Angela, do you mean CFO or CEO?
CFO. Did I say CEO?
You said
Yeah,
it
CFO.
said CFO.
Yeah, I mean, in the corporate world, treasurers typically do report to the CFO, as does the controller, who is, involved with internal audit. There are all kinds of financial checks and balances within a corporation that is part of the greater finance department, if you like. So my question to you is, what makes the municipal realm so different that this kind of reporting line will work?
So I would say the main difference is we're talking about public funds, right? We're not talking about private, shareholder interests in a company at stake. We're talking about everyone's money, right? We're talking about the assets of our town. That's the core difference. That's why even at the state level, we have separately elected state treasurer, separately elected state controller. Most states in the union actually have separately elected state treasurers for that reason, because when you're talking about public funds, the bar is far higher than a corporation. So that's why I don't think it's really an accurate, it's kind of apples and oranges type of comparison to make. But when you're talking about the public dollar, right, there's a reason why this role has been elected for 225 years. And I care deeply about our democratic institutions and right to vote. I think the right to vote is sacrosanct. And certainly before taking away someone's right to vote for something, and potentially putting their dollars in harm's way. As I think Roy mentioned, over 100 town treasurers are elected in Connecticut out of the 169. So the vast majority are elected. And again, it has been for 200 plus years have been elected roles. And the idea is you want someone who's a taxpayer who lives in the town. They're going to have that fiduciary mindset for their fellow neighbors far more than someone who may not live here, right? Like the 125,000 example, that wasn't going to be detected before the treasurer who cares about looking at the dollars and cents and how much we're earning to offset their neighbor's tax bill. That's what detected that missing money, right? And we're looking at Wilton right now. I just spoke with a member of their Board of Finance for over 2 hours last weekend. They don't have an independently elected treasurer. They, I believe 15 years ago, merged their treasurer role into their CFO role, which is sort of a scenario that you described. And right now, they have spent over $200,000, $375 an hour, for O'Connor Davies, the firm that is our external auditor. Joe Centofati, who is the audit partner on New Canaan Audits for many years, he's now over there as their interim CFO, even though they just hired a full-time CFO as well. So they're paying 2 salaries right now for 2 CFOs. He's trying to clean up the 2025 audit. And they don't even have accurate financials for 2026 year-to-date actual expenses, which is making their fiscal 27 budgeting a nightmare right now for their Board of Finance. So I don't think we would want to open up that potential can of worms and go down and potentially have something like that happen here, right? And again, I would argue that having that dual independence helps protect us from having that type of situation where now there's monies unaccounted for. There's a lot of concern up in Wilton. I have a lot of friends who live there. They're very concerned about where their money is, right? I'd like to think that New Canaanites can sleep comfortably knowing that someone who lives among them, is a fellow resident, has skin in the game, is looking out for them.
So I have 2 questions. One, going back to what you said earlier, Andrew, about, I thought you said there was a high correlation between towns that had appointed treasurers and
Or no treasurer.
Or no treasurer and material weaknesses.
Correct.
And because
Stamford is among them. Stamford has had a lot of issues with their finance
it's one of the
department.
things
No
when you look
treasurer
at
there.
when you look at the corporate world, there seems to be a pretty consistent approach to good, high quality, high standard reporting. And so the fact that, the treasurer is appointed in a lot of these towns with no treasurer. But the other thing is, I know one time used to have some insight into the Board of Education as the treasurer. Is that still, do you still have some insight into that, even if it's on a limited basis? Because very few town employees have it.
Yeah, so I do have, some, on a very limited basis, I do receive the set of expenses that go out from the Board of Ed each week. So I'm able to review what vendors are being paid, right, in that weekly report that I look at. I don't have the same level of access via their Munis system. They're on a separate Munis system than the town, which, from talking to other treasurers, is sometimes common, sometimes not so common. Sometimes it's integrated, right? Where we're paying double the fees, unfortunately, right? We're paying for 2 different subscriptions, so that's double the cost, and tens of thousands of dollars a year are spent having 2 separate systems. So that would be an enhancement if there was a way to have more detailed access to books and records. But over the years, Dr. Lutzy has invited me to come to his office. I've been able to physically look at records in person. But obviously in this age with electronic access being kind of the standard, I would say that's where on the town side, I actually do have a queue. Yeah. That's where I do those capital project invoice reviews, where I'm looking at the underlying detail. I'm looking at meeting minutes and other approvals gotten along the way so I can justify making the payment.
Mm-hmm.
Russ, sorry, Joe, Russ had his hands up, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So the actual number of sections that the treasurer is mentioned in the charter is limited.
Yeah.
It's the Board of Finance section, it's payment against judgment. Mostly it talks about receiving funds and being the person who they're addressed to. And then really the only section where it really speaks heavily is section 5.1. And it says when funds have been appropriated by town council, so the last step for the budgeting process, they shall be paid by the treasurer. Is that accurate today? At what level of engagement do you have in the daily process of expenditures by municipal departments and everybody else in funds? Or where do you get engaged in that process? Is the charter accurate?
So I would say I ultimately am the payer of those funds, right? It's my name that's attached to every payment of the town. Now, again, some of them I personally manually review in the system and click a button to approve, and then it gets sent to be issued.
And it's reviewing, or you're actually involved in all of the dispersals? Because the charter says it's every dispersal should be through treasurer if you read it black and white. So that's why I'm curious if it's accurately reflecting or not.
Right. So I do have the ability to review, I do get the weekly prepared check run list. So I'm able to see in advance all the payments that are about to go out. And if there's any I want to say, hold off, don't make it, I have that ability to do that. I think there could be, I believe it was Rob Malazzi, our former first selectman, who had set up the current kind of threshold of where there's a manual review required for treasurer. But I think there is, especially as of late and hearing about some of the internal audit report that unfortunately I have not yet been given a copy of, and a little concerned about that as the person who's overseeing, involved in procurement. I should be aware of that. But notwithstanding that, I've been thinking about lowering that threshold so that I can do more of that manual review. But a lot of expenses are pro forma. Like we get a Verizon bill every month for all the cell phones that are used by town hall employees, right? There's nothing really extra, I guess, out of the ordinary to require as deep of a dive on those types of invoices as there is on, say, the bigger construction projects where $300,000 is about to go out the door. That in a very technical sense, the charter is still accurate because, again, it's my name ultimately that's approving the payment. Whether I click a button in the tool, if you believe that my not clicking the little button for the thousands of payments that go out each week, if you think that is an indicator that we need to potentially amend charter language, I'm happy to consider that. Or I'm also happy to lower the threshold so that I can review more. Again, I've been given pushback for trying to lower that threshold, mind you. I would actually like to lower it.
I think that's the crux of the question is, are you hitting a button, or is there a threshold where they must go through to get approval? Or is that codified currently anywhere, whether it's in the ordinance or town?
I believe it's codified in town policies and procedures that.
So it's not an ordinance, but it's done through just what has been.
Correct. Because again, in theory, if I want to right now, I can say, I'm taking back my signature, my electronic signature, and you manually have to give me everything and I manually have to sign off on it. Now, I think that could create a bottleneck and cause delays in payments because we have thousands of payments that go out. So I wouldn't want to do that.
Have a full-time job.
Right. Right.
Okay. Hold on. And Joe, and then Steve, I noted that you're raising your hand after Joe Pello. Okay.
Andrew, you mentioned Wilton and the shortcomings they had and how they handled their treasurer's office. I understand recently they combined the offices of tax collector and tax assessor into one, and we've mirrored that process. And if I understand it correctly, where we've taken what were two positions before and now it's under one. How does that work? Is that favorable? Is that something we should be concerned about?
I am very concerned about that because from my reading of the charter, those two roles are required to be done by different people. I believe there's a section in the charter for the assessor that says the assessor shall not have any other position in the government. And then there's a similar language in the tax collector provision in the charter that says the same thing. And then there's Article 2, which also says provisions in this charter that prevent one person from holding more than one office, shall not preclude them from serving on a committee. But again, those two roles, neither of those roles is a committee role. Both of them are very important roles. And so I do fear we are in a violation of the charter at the moment. I have wanted to escalate that to legal. Unfortunately, my access to the town attorney has been interfered with, which is really concerning, and why I would also recommend to the Charter Commission. I've been told that I've just been instructed that I am not to have access to the town attorney anymore for the first time in over a decade of doing this job, which is very concerning because the town attorney is there to answer these kinds of legal questions. And I think all officials of the town ought to have unfettered access to the town attorney. And so that's why I would urge this group to consider making that clear in the charter, at least that elected officers of the town, right, who ultimately bear responsibility for the functioning of our government, that they ought to have unfettered access to bring legal questions to the town attorney, who really ought to be working for all of the officials, representing all of us, not just one official.
let me, I'm going to go to, thank you. I'm
Sure.
going to go to Steve first and then Chris, but just let me say that a number of us have actually looked into the town assessor and tax collector role, and there's a legitimate and legal reason, and I can chat about that afterwards, but I don't want to take.
Well, I'd be curious to know that
I
too.
don't want to take away from the town treasurer role, so I'm going to go Steve.
I think you would share that with the group.
Steve, go ahead. Steve Case.
Sure. Just very quickly. We've talked about governance issues that the treasurer role is barely mentioned, and you've taken a very activist role. And there, to my knowledge, aren't a lot of ordinances or governance provisions on your role. Could you, after this meeting, send us a list of issues just like what we're talking about that you feel we need to address in this charter review? Or perhaps it's not us, it's the town council or some other body that needs to address that. Because I think you bring up very legitimate points. You have a lot of great experience in this role. And I think you would only be enhanced if all the governance issues were buttoned up.
Can I just make a comment first? So we, just for everyone's edification, we have put together sort of a framework for the town treasurer role. Group two, sorry. And I've actually shared it with Andrew to get his input as well. So some of it involves issuance of bonds, roles, responsibilities. I think there's 5 items that we've actually created. So that is actually in progress. Yeah, just for everyone's knowledge. Yeah.
And I'm happy
Minds
to
think
come.
alike. Yeah.
And actually, if I could just add to Steve's comments too, it occurred to me that as you're talking about all of the roles that are laid out by the role of the town treasurer, that the term compliance is not really embodied. And I know, every 10 years, it's really not reflected in the charter. And it sounds like a lot of what you do is are compliance related. And again, I think that's perhaps a newer term in the lexicon of finance and so forth that might be considered.
Yeah, or risk management,
I
right?
think it's
Compliance
actually
or
risk
risk.
management, what he's
Yeah.
doing. He's not doing true compliance.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
that's-
we don't
that's
seem to have the true compliance piece either.
We don't have
Right.
either.
Because ultimately, right, I'm a second level reviewer. By the time it gets to my queue, it's already gone through 5 other people, right? The departments get the invoice, they're logging it into the system because we have a decentralized process here, which again, with the merits of that, we could talk about for a long time because I see kind of both sides to whether it makes sense to do that versus have all the invoices go to finance, get logged in, and then get routed to the appropriate department head to review and approve, then come back to, finance to me to do a final approval. Right. That's something that some towns have done. But I know here we have a decentralized, but there are multiple people, multiple hands involved in entering things in, then submitting it forward to the next stage of the review process. But I agree, a lot of my work is, we're not back in the 1800s when the treasurer probably did it single-handedly and there wasn't a finance staff to help execute all the steps of those processes. We didn't have these complicated accounting systems to worry about. We had a paper ledger. So now I would say, a lot of the role is, compliance. I mean, in some ways I am like an internal auditor, really, by virtue of the role, which to the point talked about earlier is why that independence piece is so important. At the bank I work at, we have a third line of defense is our internal audit. They report directly to the board of directors. They actually don't report to the CFO. So they are in a different reporting line. They're not in the same reporting line. So I just want to make that point really clear.
Okay, Chris.
So I just want to go back to this comment you made about town attorney.
Mm-hmm.
And earlier you made the comment that the virtue, one of the virtues was that you were an elected official, therefore had independence.
Yep.
So the question is, if you have that degree of independence, why are you not challenging and just calling the town attorney directly? I mean, whose authority do you need?
Well, they don't answer my calls anymore.
No.
And then they don't respond to my emails anymore because they've been instructed not to talk to me. So I've made multiple attempts to reach them.
For how long?
Months.
For what kinds of issues?
Well, to talk about the assessor issue that I was talking about, there are a couple of, I mean, over the years, there have been plenty of issues to talk to the town attorney about. There were periods where under prior finance directors, bank accounts were being opened without my knowledge or consent, right? And then checking with them to make sure like this isn't legal, right? And they would say, yeah, that's not appropriate. That needs to be rectified. So I would go to the audit committee as well with some of those concerns. But yeah, unfortunately, my access to the town attorney has been interrupted for the first time in my 13 years here. And it's concerning, which is why I think putting something into the charter and ensuring that all elected officials of the town have appropriate access to raise issues to the town attorney and have a conversation with them. I promise not to blow the legal budget, right? I'm mindful that they charge a lot of money per hour, but I don't think that's an excuse to hinder an elected official's ability to speak up. And again, the treasurer is one of 3 positions in town hall that are elected, right? The town clerk, town treasurer, first selectman, they're working during business hours, right, with the staff. I think it's important that we have multiple New Canaan residents and taxpayers in, overseeing that operation day to day. Obviously, we have boards and commissions that meet in the evenings. They're getting information sent to them. But I think actually having people who are involved in the town's operations that live here is really important, which is why, for the record, I support keeping the town clerk also an elected official for that reason.
Okay, Bill, and then Jen.
I just think on this point about the legal consultation, we should put that on the list.
I'm just reading the, sorry, I'm reading 18-1. It actually says, it says
You have
that
to have access to it.
it says any department, board, commission, and officers of the town relating to their official duties.
Who shall
Not
be
just
legal
elected, just
counsel.
any,
Board,
I'm
commission.
not gonna say, I'm sure you have the same experience. I think it sounds like you worked with corporate. Well, I mean, I could show you my phone from last night, direct conversations with the general counsel of a pretty prestigious company. And I'm just on the board. And so, I mean, I just think this needs to be
I think there's
reinforced.
some, position versus person is kind
That's
of
right.
being influenced
That's
here,
right.
I think. But anyway, Jen, you had a comment.
I had a question. So you've been elected 7 times, you said?
Yes,
And you work full-time.
yes.
So how does that work? You've worked at Morgan Stanley, I think it's City National Bank.
Yep, that's the RBC subsidiary I
RBC
currently work at.
subsidiary,
Yep,
And then Deloitte, others.
yep.
So what happens with your employer?
Well, that's a good question. So I essentially have to, every time I've switched to private sector employer, I've had to fill out a form with the compliance department, attesting to the fact that there aren't conflicts of interest, right? That if there ever were to be a conflict of interest between the business of the bank and the town, that I would recuse myself. And that's usually it. I mean, I've never had any obstacles being able to run for office. And frankly, I'm not aware, I have heard that come up, actually. It's good you raised that because it has come up multiple times that, people's employers don't let them run. I have not heard a single example or a name of a company that blocks their employees from running for office. So I don't necessarily agree with the claim that,
There's a few.
okay, what are they?
Bank of America.
No, not true.
It's changed.
Okay, we'll cut back to that.
My point though, my point is a disproportionate number of residents in New Canaan work in financial services. And look, I don't think my mom would tell you I'm pretty special. I don't know if I'm as special as she thinks I am, but there are plenty of talented people in this community that can run for treasurer. In fact, our current audit committee chairman, who sadly is stepping away for some of the reasons I think you were just alluding to, Kathleen, about some of the personality issues going on here, underlying a lot of what's going on here. He's a terrific person. He ran for treasurer in 2017. Worked at Deloitte for 45 years. After the election, we had lunch, we got to know each other. I said, hey, you ought to get involved in the audit committee. You're terrific. And we've worked very well together. But again, someone like him, and there are a lot of people out there who could run for treasurer. So if there is a concern that, there aren't enough qualified people out there, that doesn't apply here.
Angela.
So 2-year term, is that the right length? Or would it be better if it were 4, say?
Yeah, so I have thought about that a little bit because someone brought that question to my mind. I do think a longer term would be better, especially earlier on in my tenure, where I got elected. My predecessor had been in the job for 48 years, and it had been sort of a ceremonial position. There wasn't the set of processes that I execute today in place at the time. And so I had to go and do a lot of research. I had to read the state statutes. I went around to Fairfield County town treasurers that are elected and talked to them. I even talked to some non-elected treasurers too, just to get an idea of what they do in their towns. And I learned that every town is different. Even elected treasurers in other towns don't do exactly what I do. But I would say that it took some time to really learn all there is to learn. And I keep thinking of new ways to add value over time. So I do think a longer term would insulate that person, the treasurer, whether it's me or someone in the future, a new person, would give them time to really learn the ropes. I know we have 4-year terms for Board of Education, for Town Council, for Board of Finance. And I know other elected town treasurers, there are plenty of examples that have 4-year terms. There are also many that have 2-year terms. I know Darian's a 2-year term town treasurer, elected town treasurer, and I talk to her pretty frequently. But yeah, I would say a longer term would be better if that is in the cards.
I believe the state minimum is only 2, right?
Right. The state sets a standard of 2-year
2,
terms.
But you could go to 4.
But by charter, you can choose 4 instead of 2. Correct.
Based on home rule. Yep.
Correct.
Yeah. And
Yes.
that last
Judy.
thought on what we were saying. Can you describe, or what was the genesis of the conflict in 2016 and how was it resolved?
The conflict?
That you mentioned at the first selectman or the,
Oh, with the material weaknesses.
it was just about material weakness?
Well,
or-
I think it was a combination of, a lack of desire to work cooperatively. The decision to try to open up secret accounts and move money into them without running it by the treasurer, who again is ultimately responsible for making the payments to the town, is really concerning behavior. Frankly, I mean, Bill's probably able to answer, what ultimately happened in that situation. But after raising a lot of red flags, I think the audit committee decided we're not comfortable approving the financials. We haven't seen adequate improvement on addressing the material weaknesses and significant deficiencies. And that led to a sea change in town hall and bringing in a new CFO and who really cleaned things up and was a true partner. I mean, she would invite me into her office and we met on a very regular basis. And I think that's a healthy dynamic that, I would love to see again. Unfortunately, it isn't always that healthy. And as I've been alluding to with the town attorney example, it hasn't been as healthy as I would personally like it to be. So again, you're always going to have personality conflicts, but I do think, those issues have been resolved. The current CFO and I are in close coordination when it comes to freeing up money so that I can then go and invest it. And so, but I would like more communication, absolutely. And I don't know if there's something in the charter that's appropriate to mandate such communication so that you can't go many months begging for meetings and not having those meeting requests,
You guys have to work
answered.
that out. You got to work that out. Yeah, it's leadership, right?
Yeah.
Do you make annual reports?
So I make quarterly reports generally,
Given to you.
usually Board of Finance as well, to the Board of Finance as well as to Town Council. And then I'll occasionally give updates to Audit Committee, upon request. But I'd say most of my financial updates are given to those two bodies. Usually for Board of Finance, and I haven't been called before you guys yet, Chris, but usually I come in to give a presentation on my budget estimate of revenue for the year and why I think we're going to earn X amount of dollars, why I think that's a reliable number. So I do give those updates on a quarterly basis. And again, upon request, if anyone has questions about anything, and someone asked me, how much did we spend on legal last year? I found the number and got it to them, right? So if people have questions, I'm always able to answer them. That's why it's not really a 9-to-5 job. It's really, I'm answering requests over the weekend. I'm getting calls at all times of the night, right? But that's part of the job, and I like that.
If something happened, God forbid, but if you got the proverbial bus stepped in your way, who's your back? What happens? What does the town rely on in terms of, they can't use your signature any longer?
Right.
What's the backup plan?
I don't know if it's in the charter, but I thought that there is a process where in the event of a vacancy, maybe it's in the state statutes. I have not thought about my own demise like that, but I would say that it's probably an appointment process. There's probably an appointment that happens But I can get back to you on
Until the
that.
next
We
election.
might
Until
look
the
into
next
that.
So I
election.
put that in
It's in
our
the
little
first
framework.
selectmen section. It's
Okay.
for
That covers a
elected
lot.
officials.
Right.
Um,
The process.
there's another election, but the first selectman appoints someone until that next election. However, it doesn't really detail how they appoint and any rules about the appointment, so it's very vague. So I was thinking we
Right.
could add something.
We might want to have some kind of succession planning in the charter to some degree. I think
To
that's a good idea.
understand. So,
Right,
I mean,
to outline-
checks are going out and there's
Right.
no one to
Right,
sign
so,
them.
so in our
I
framework.
mean, it
that we
applies to
developed-
town clerk as well, what happens.
Yeah.
you know, I guess
Well,
there's
there
an
is.
assistant.
Well, they have a.
There is an
Assistant
assistant
That's
town clerk.
different.
So
Yeah.
I do have under 7-80, I do have the authority to appoint a deputy treasurer. I've chosen not to exercise that right to appoint a deputy, generally because, again, I don't have a staff to manage. It's a part-time role. I didn't want to just have a person there and not have maybe sufficient work to give them. But it's something I've thought about doing over the years, appointing a deputy treasurer who, in theory, I don't know if that person automatically would succeed me though, under the current wording of the charter. But again, if the charter were updated and it was a required appointment, then that person theoretically would be the person that would fill the place in the event of my vacancy
Until the next election.
until the next election, right?
We should put that on our list,
Yeah.
succession, but I just want to say, when I was working with Andrew on the audit committee, you probably saw.
Bill, can you put the mic on?
I'm sorry. When I was working with Andrew on the audit committee, you were, how old were you when you were first elected?
Oh, I don't think that's a person.
Oh, my goodness.
Would you like to volunteer?
Well, yeah, I was 27 at the time.
Oh, my gosh.
So it's pretty, I was
No,
pretty
but I
young.
just, it was always, it's great to have young people in government.
Well, I honestly do see myself as representing a different generation. We don't have a lot of people of my demographic represented in government. And I think that is part of the beauty of having this be an elected role, is it gave me an opportunity to contribute in a way that comes naturally to me as someone that's been in the financial services space. Because to me, this work isn't very difficult for me. I have tried to dig and find puzzles to solve, and I have, but it's been a way for me to contribute to the town. And again, whether it's me or some other very talented person in finance, I hope that that example actually shows you don't need to have a million years of experience to do this job. You need someone who's inquisitive, who can work well with others, who cares about saving taxpayer dollars. And I would say that person is qualified to run for treasurer.
Do you work well with others?
I'd like to think I do. But again, it's a two-way street, right? It takes two to tango. And you can make yourself available for every meeting in the world and ask to meet with someone. And if they don't want to meet with you, you can't coerce people to meet with you.
Do you have any more remarks that you wanted? Because we started to interrupt you. Sorry.
I
We
was,
started into the
Did we?
barrage.
yeah, I mean,
Steve's got some
I had
other pages there.
non-treasurer related sections
hear
to
about
quickly
that,
run
yeah.
through. I know one of the topics is Board of Selectmen 3 versus 5. I'm in the camp of 5. And actually, when you go down the stairs in Town Hall and you see a plaque from I think it was either the 50s or the 70s, I forget what decade,
50.
there were 5 names on there. And I was like, wait, and I actually called the Historical Society, and unfortunately they don't have a researcher on staff to look things up for me. And I haven't had time to go over there myself and look. But I do think from a organizational, FOIA issues, right, where you can't have the Democrat and Republican meet together currently on the Board of Selectmen because then that constitutes a meeting. I do think that kind of keeps the person in the minority out kind of in the cold and in the dark on a lot of things going on. At least you were in that position, Kathleen, yourself. So I don't know if that rings true for you, where you're learning things at the meeting that you're supposed to vote on various topics. So I do think being able to caucus with at least one other person would be of value for decision-making in the town. So I'd be in favor of increasing the Board of Selectmen from 3 to 5 for that reason. I also do think that the town council should be defined in the charter as the ultimate budget authority. I do believe our legal counsel, there was a letter they wrote that was then posted to meeting minutes that I read. So that's how, since the town attorney won't talk to me directly anymore, I was able to learn that apparently they agree that the town council in New Canaan is our budget authority. But the word budget authority appears a lot in state statutes because in some towns it's different. Right? The Board of Finance is elected, they're the budget authority, and then the people vote in a referendum on the budget, right? They constitute the legislature. But here, the town council has ultimate budget authority over over that, as the final approver of the budget. So I do think we should define them as the ultimate budget authority. I've already mentioned the town attorney reference, that there should be no, unfettered access. It sounds like that might already be in there. So would love to talk with you offline about that if we have an issue that needs to get resolved now. I would say there's something in there about secretarial support being provided to town council, I think by the first selectman's office, if I'm not mistaken. I do feel that has been stretched over the years. And I don't know if, Judy, if this was the case when you were first selectman, but at this point, it sounds like a lot of the agenda is written by the first selectman's office and not by the body, the chair of the body of the town council. And while I agree that first selectman's office should be able to provide input on the town council's agenda, they ought to own their own agenda. They are an independent body. Again, checks and balances. I come back to that cornerstone principle. We have separate but equal branches of government, even at the local level, not just at the federal level. And we shouldn't have the executive branch telling the legislative branch what topics they're permitted to discuss at their meetings. And I fear that some of that might be happening today based on what I understand of the agenda setting process. Which,
can I just say, we have not heard that from anybody on the town council. So maybe that's something you've heard. But
something I've observed and something that I've heard from multiple town council members who may not be,
They may not say it.
they may be uncomfortable talking about it. So that's why I'm here.
I think they used to have a more substantial say. I mean, there's things that obviously have to go to the town council that have been approved by the Board of Finance. That's
right. And that's totally fine, right? If something happened at the Board of Finance or Board of Selectmen and now it needs to go to the town council for final approval, of course that should be on the agenda. But I'm just saying the person who's the chair of that body ought to be driving their own agenda setting with the secretary of that body, which to that end is why I would also say that the first selectman should not be ex officio on every board and commission of the town. Again, I think that creates this overreach of the executive, where they can be, involved in a lot of the different affairs of boards and commissions, that we ought to let them, right, independently decide what their priorities are as a group, as a body, right? And if the first selectman wants to attend their meetings and offer their thoughts, that's fine. But and again, I'm not talking about even the current first selectman. I'm saying, and I'm not talking about you necessarily either. I didn't go back that far and watch meetings, but I've watched many of these meetings over the years. And sometimes it feels like the conversation is very driven by the first selectman. And I don't know if that's really the intent of our charter, right? Again, the board of selectmen appoints all these people. They ought to be given free rein to set their own agendas and discuss, I just fear groupthink ultimately.
5 more minutes. Anything else?
Sure. Let's see. I know in the charter, everyone is an officer currently, or at least that's how I read it, both elected and non-elected people. I think I made the comment earlier. I do think that elected officials of the town, or even maybe just the quote executive branch elected officials, which I would say the treasurer, town clerk, and board of selectmen are the executive branch elected officials. They ought to be defined as town officers, similar to how of a company, right? An officer would be the CEO, CFO, like whoever the core top officials are, should be the official officers of the entity. So I do think we should narrow down who an officer is. And I do think, we should also have in the definitions that those officers are also, quote, town management. Because town management is often a term used in the audit context. And again, when Bill was on audit committee, I, as the treasurer, I was consulted on a lot of different projects that they were doing. And I do feel like now some people in town hall have a different perspective, not the audit committee, but others in town hall have the perspective that the treasurer is not part of management and have used that as justification to leave the treasurer out of important meetings, again, involving the finances of the town. So I do think defining that really clearly in the charter would be helpful. Trying to think of any other topics. Yeah, and again, I plan to go to group 2 to add, to your article that you're thinking about and fleshing some of that out. Again, I thought that the CRC 10 years ago did a great job adding in that line about making sure the treasurer had the authorities vested to treasurers under state statutes. That line was very important Because before that, it was a bit ambiguous as to what the treasurer job is, because literally there was nothing referring to state statutes, nothing at all, other than a couple of lines that Russ read earlier about, making payments. So I think the CRC did a great job of emboldening the role 10 years ago. And it was that authority upon which I have been able to expand the role. And I think we ought to continue going in that direction. I would hate to see us backtrack and reduce the importance of the role and remove public input from the role.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have one last question. So you obviously converse with a lot of the town treasurers and watch Hartford. Do
Yep.
you see anything coming that we should be aware of as we go forward in terms of the statutes for town treasurer?
I've not heard of any changes to statutes relating to town treasurer up in Hartford.
Okay, good. Okay.
So yeah, I think we're good on that front. I think, again, the charter process allows towns to kind of decide for themselves what they want out of the position that's above and beyond what the statutes say.
Yeah, there's like, I would say guardrails that are in the state statutes, but there is a lot of discretion.
Right. Right. And again, look, everything doesn't have to be perfectly documented. There have been plenty of tasks over the years that I've taken on that aren't really necessarily part of the quote treasurer job. But I've always said, I'm here to help. Use me in any way you can in town hall. Now, unfortunately, I don't always get taken up on that offer, but it's always there. Even right now, it's still extended.
Thank you.
I want to thank you.
Thank you.
Joe got his wish. You spoke as long as you wanted to. And we appreciate that. We appreciate that very, very much. So, of course, we're always fair, Joe. We're always fair.
Yeah.
Thank you kindly.
Thank you very
Really
much.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. And I know you'll be back on other items, so.
Bye.
Yes,
I just put something. Okay, 2 seconds.
what is it?
The question about corporations appointing the treasurer.
Why don't we take it up? You send me a note about that. Okay, yeah.
Public companies.
We're running out of time. Yeah, thank you very much, Roy. I appreciate your comments. You can send those to me. Okay. Woo. All right, we are once again running out of time. Here's a proposal to you guys, and Jen's been doing a lot of work on drafting something that, should we share it? You ready to share it?
I can circulate. Okay, sorry. So first in background, group 2 really felt that we needed to put together a town treasurer section. And so we went through Article 5 and some of these other areas, and I put together a framework with some sections,
That are
including
consistent with the other roles.
right. But I've also added things, knowing what I know a treasurer does, which is on bonding. So I created a section on that. I haven't drafted language yet. I've just been looking for any other input that I'm happy to circulate to the group. And I was actually going to slot in. So the idea is, because we've also had in group 2, Article 2, which has that line at the beginning of Article 2 about the town treasurer that was added. I think we all felt it was somewhat of an orphan on its own, but it was there for an important reason. So we would take some of that and slot it into this new section or article. And so what I'm happy to do is circulate that to everyone for everyone's input. I'm not looking for you to draft. I'm just looking for you to opine. Andrew has kindly received that as well. Andrew, I'm waiting for your comments. And then all right. And then the goal is to basically draft a section that's fresh. So
no reply alls. Do you want just individual emails from one-to-one with?
one-to-one.
Yeah.
That's what you got to do.
You got it. Perfect.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to make sure we were all playing. by
Could
the
we
rules.
also, in addition to sharing it with the commission, I think it's fresh on our minds, so I'd like us to continue with the theme. If we leave it to other things, we'll have to ask you to come back and recite everything you said. No, we've got it. We've got your input. We then now have to convene and talk about it, and using the draft that Jen is putting together and we'll share with everybody. We'll take that up again in 2 weeks at our meeting. We'll talk about it certainly at group 2 further, just to get it deeper. Also like to share it with the CFO as well.
I already did.
You did? Okay, great. Okay. I heard that you shared it with Andrew, so you already shared it with Andrew. Okay, great.
And I just for everyone's edification, we were waiting for comments because section 5 is so large.
Yeah.
And we went through a very detailed review a couple times, right, group 2. So I am following up because there's so many moving parts in there, including the sewer and water district. I am following up with everyone who at least owes us something in there to get all of that together before we start to maneuver things around. And this treasurer role is part of it.
Okay.
So on Article 5,
Yeah.
are you looking to,
Your mic.
so is your direction in which you guys are going on Article 5, is it to break it up?
We're looking at each item.
Because
under
it's a
Article
catch-all.
5.
It's
a
basically
catch-all.
a finance article.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
correct.
every darn thing that's finance has been thrown in there.
Correct.
And it doesn't make a whole bunch of sense when you read the whole thing. I mean, you read the whole thing, you say, oh, there are 17 articles here. Well,
It's the
there are
literal
5
fiction
different
thing.
topics.
Yeah.
And there's a sewer and water district there, which you kindly
Yeah,
sort of
there's-
educated us on as well. So
Yeah, so, which
So
is,
it
We're
is the
looking to
kitchen sink
clean
and
it
we're
up.
looking to clean
Good.
it up.
Yeah, because that
Including
means-
the audit committee.
that,
including the audit committee
so
coming
that's
out.
good. So a lot of, that's good.
And so you'll hear more on that. Listen, in the interest of time, I'm just looking at perhaps tabling some of these items until the next thing. One of the things I'll ask for, I'm going to suggest that I'd like to talk, if we have 12 minutes to talk about term limits and at least get there. The public survey, I think we saw your comments, Jen. Did you have anything else you wanted to add on that? Did you send something out about?
Yeah, I sent it out.
Yeah.
The updated, we have now 3 more. I think we're up to 74.
Yeah.
I'll give the update on the postcard as well, if you'd like.
Okay, yeah.
The postcard, the wording has been approved. The list was sent over. It'll go out this week. The one last final review, which is required by the US Post Office for change of addresses. So they take every address that they're given by us and actually look at it. They run it through a process to be sure that nobody's moved. I know. And they also look at validity of addresses. So Jennifer Home can't live at 1355.
And we're paying for that from the service?
Well, that's mandatory now by
Is
the
that
United.
right?
Yeah, so they actually look at not just that Jennifer lives at 1355. They don't care about that. But they looked at, is 1355 a real address in the
Yeah,
town?
That part's valid.
So
That's worth
that'll be
doing.
finished
Yeah.
by tomorrow and it'll be then going out.
Okay.
Okay?
Great.
Okay, great. Let's go back and let's start at least the conversation on term limits. And again, everybody was kind enough to hopefully work on the comments. And we can start by having comments. We've got, Bill's asked me to whiteboard it and I came ready to do that. And pens and
Are you
everything.
gonna collect our homework?
Make a suggestion though?
Yes, Jen.
Can we first talk about terms
Yes.
Yeah.
before we get to limiting of terms?
Yes, great.
Are you gonna collect the homework that you made us? all
I'd like
do?
to collect the homework.
Yeah.
And if
Okay.
you feel comfortable sending it to me electronically, I'd appreciate
No,
that
I could,
even
I
more.
printed it out.
I did think I thought we were gonna.
I
have that
haven't changed
opportunity.
much since
Either one.
5th grade.
Either
So-
one works.
So kindly give me hard copy, but if you're comfortable with what it says and you're comfortable that that's your position, send it to me electronically too, and then I'll collate everything and just make it easier.
Electronic or?
Electronic at this point? Okay, at this point? So, okay, very good. Jennifer?
So sorry, I circulated a document that basically talked about the terms. And I can say from group 2, we have come across some discussion points about sometimes making terms from 2 to 3. And so, for example, that would be one of the groups we've spoken to. I knew you were going to ask me this. As conservation, I believe. Yeah. And so there sort of has been, for lack of a better word, terms committed for 2. To your point, Angela, 2 for town treasurer. Could there be also 4 for town clerk? And so I thought what we should probably do is have a brief discussion about, have you and other groups had this discussion as well about increasing terms or putting
Yeah,
terms into
so
standardization?
Group 1 has done that, and we have come up with trying to propose some consistency,
Mhm.
certainly in relation to P&Z and inland wetlands, two of the land use commissions, and we have looked at both of those. And where we've come up, and I don't think we actually voted on this, but there seemed to be a consensus that 3 years was a good term. And to some extent, we've also mirrored what we've seen for Board of Finance, where I believe is that 3 or 4, Chris? That's 4. But the alternates are 2.
The alternates
I
are
don't
2.
understand that.
Because it's a refresh, if you will. That's true on all the other boards where alternates are not the same number
So
as the
if you wanted to put
regular
the
members.
document up on the screen, I can send it to you. If you're.
Oh, well, I saw the document you sent
Okay,
round,
never mind.
yes.
Okay.
May I ask a
So, Russ, yes.
broad question of all the groups? Did anyone have anyone say that term lengths should be shorter? It seems unanimous across everything that it requires a lot of time to get up to speed. It takes a lot across every single person I've heard from so far. Has anybody heard otherwise, since we're just talking at the highest level?
No.
Everyone that we
Okay.
spoke to said that whatever the term limit was for their group was okay.
Right,
They
okay.
were fine with it, so. whether it was- Yeah.
But we also, but how many, Jen, you have the report on, I think there are 4, possibly 5 commissions that are 2 years.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I
just,
don't-
let's
that's not
just cite those. I know. in
Board of
wetlands-
Assessment Appeals.
Okay.
Okay.
CBA.
I'm gonna read it off.
Yeah.
Board of Finance alternate.
Yes.
If you want to add them.
Yeah.
Another 2-year is our friends at Inland Wetlands Commission. Inland Wetlands Commission alternates was actually not specified in the document at all, so that's sort of a gap. Conservation Commission, we spoke to 2 years. They had no concerns about going higher. Planning and zoning alternates are 2 years. ZBA is 2 years, and ZBA alternates is 2 years. And then if we add in clerk and treasurer as elected.
And could I just say that it can be an administrative issue if you have to, too often, you get reappointed. So you have to go and take another oath. And that needs to be done ahead of the meeting.
Oh, sure.
Of the next meeting of the Board of Commission. And that can sometimes be an issue. I just think it's administratively cumbersome and unnecessary for the appointment to be just 2 years for all of these boards or commissions.
Does that create an imbalance with the first selectman's election every 2 years? Because certain selectmen might get a whole bundle of appointments and other first selectmen might not get much of any, just on the way the timing would work out.
I think the way they're currently staggered, there's never a lack of a list.
So
Having served on the Board of Selectmen every year that you get a lot that are come because of the rotation.
Chris has it.
Yes, Chris, I'm sorry.
I wonder if we could start the conversation by separating out alternates from regular members and see if we can come to a decision on alternates. To keep them all alternates at 2 years. There's no real reason that I can think of to make them longer.
I agree with
I
that.
agree.
Well,
yeah, I agree.
actually, I'm happy to discuss this, but I disagree. I mean, why do we treat them differently? Alternates play a very important function. They are there to be seated when regular members are not available or have to recuse themselves. Why do they need to be reappointed 2 years if the regular members are reappointed every 3 or 4? I just don't see the rationale for that.
I have to agree with you, Angela, because when I was making that chart and double checking that
Yeah.
chart and came across that, and actually for wetlands, they're not even specified technically, which is like, whoops. I didn't understand. I'd like to understand, maybe it was a prior charter thing, but whenever that was put in place, why don't you keep them at least concurrently the same amount of term, right?
I was an alternate on Board of Finance and so I had to, if I were to be reappointed, I have to come up, was it every 2 years? Is that honestly, when you sign up to be anything, an alternate or a regular member, you're really committing to a term. And if you're an alternate and you've been an alternate, I remember one person who was an alternate on the Board of Finance, you know what I'm
Forever.
talking about?
Forever.
For a long, long time. And it's like, if you've committed for 3 years and then you're signing up for another 3 years and you're still not on the board, I would feel like I would probably drop off if I were not a regular member. And I think it's a lot easier if it's a shorter term to take a pause and say, do I want to stay on this? No, I want to go do something else. That's why I'd advocate for the 2-year, or what it is today. I'm sure there was a good reason that someone came up with it better than I can describe,
Yeah,
but
I was
shorter
al-
was better for
I
me.
was an alternate on the Board of Finance for a long time. I mean, I stepped up when Spengler's left,
With who?
when Bob left.
Oh, is that when you, okay.
But I came on in 14 or 15.
He was on for like
Well,
14, 15
He was on,
years.
yeah, for 15
He was
years.
on long, yeah.
Could I just make a counterpoint here,
Mhm.
which is, I mean, maybe Board of Finance folks are different, but people resign all the time from boards and commissions, whether they're regular members or alternates. And there's no reason really why they shouldn't, life happens to them. So I don't think that you're really saying if the period for a appointment of an alternate was 3 or 4 years, that you're actually saying, come hell or high water, I'm going to be here for the next 3 or 4 years, because that's
you
not what
infers.
happens.
That's what it infers.
That's
and
not,
that's
but
not
that's
right.
not,
Yeah,
that's not
right.
actually what happens.
No.
Maybe it's different on Board of Finance, and maybe
No.
it needs to
It's
be.
an individual choice.
Yeah.
How
No, I don't
committed
think
you're
there's any
willing to be.
difference. The Board of Finance doesn't have a particular reason other than I think it's convention in the town to use 2 years for alternates. The question is, do we want to change that? Do we say, have a unit kind of decide at a very high level that the alternates should have the same term as the regular members? Whatever we decide those would be.
Let's have a, God bless you, let's have maybe a deeper dive into that. Take a look at where other boards and commissions outside of New Canaan might have.
Sure, I
incentive
think I
use of
have some of that
alternates.
Yeah,
research
but
already.
so what?
Just
but-
curious. No,
Curiosity, but who cares what Wilton and Darien?
That's right.
I do care.
Well,
Yes, Bill.
It's a requirement for wherever we have alternates, that if someone doesn't show up,
Mhm.
Yes,
Yes.
they call.
Has to
Yes.
form a quorum.
they have to, just to form a quorum.
Yeah.
So, but if you don't need somebody to form a quorum, do they still appoint an alternate?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, if there's any gap, any missing regular member,
That's
Gets
right.
filled.
the
Especially
alternates
time of
get
vote.
voted in to the extent that there are enough alternates to fill the,
By party.
well, it depends. Some boards seem to do it by parties,
Not necessary.
but some don't.
I don't
I
think the
mean,
P and Z does.
The first time I was on the audit committee, I was chastised because
You had alternates at one
I
point.
get alternates,
Yeah.
a Republican couldn't show up, so I sat.
You
what I thought was a-
rotated.
What I thought was a woman, because I liked some diversity, but it was a different party, so I got my first introduction to politics.
Well, except it was never
So-
like that. That's more recent.
Yeah.
I think we heard that the
We
P and
just
Z
appoint, yeah,
rotates.
that's right.
Yeah.
But we appointed, I think more so for rotation.
Okay.
For years.
So I know we're running
Yeah,
low on
for
time.
years.
So
Yeah.
do we agree that maybe going forward, what we'll do is first examine the terms and look at taking
Yeah.
2 to at
Yeah.
least 3?
Is anybody?
Sorry about the
just
alternates. I
No.
mean, that's like a whole
other
other
topic, but
side topic at the moment.
Well, it is and it isn't, right? Because you ought to start with the alternates, and then decide kind of universally what you're gonna do with them. And then decide your overall board.
let me just
Sure.
stop and just ask, and I know we're missing somebody here, but
Mhm.
just, I want to get a consensus. Does anyone object to those boards and commissions that have a 2-year term to take them to 3-year terms?
Right.
Is there any objection to that?
I haven't heard a single person that we've interviewed or from the
Okay,
public
Steve
commentary.
Gates, no objection?
It's fine.
Okay, let's take that next step to see what are the unintended consequences
Of
of that
that,
decision, because I'm sure there are.
Well,
So can we take that back
And
into our
rolling off
own
and falling
groups
on.
and then come back as a group and each group, like, for instance, we've already said the Conservation Commission is for this.
Well, I'd like to get a list of everybody now and where they are in their terms, because if this became
Just about said
effective,
same.
in November 4th of 2026, where everybody went up to how would that impact current roles and responsibilities and terms that people currently have?
I've got that information.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Let's not repeat
Yeah.
work that's
But
already been
couldn't you
done.
just-
I've got that.
Seems to me you could write something in that says, and here's how the interim process is going to work.
Yeah, no, for sure, but
Okay.
let's make sure that we understand that so that it's not,
But I think what
people are
Chris-
mad at us after November 4th.
I think what
And
Chris is saying, we don't need to look at the names, right?
No, we don't have to, we're just saying whoever's an incumbent will finish out their term and then upon reappointment,
I don't want to
Or
happen what
re-election.
happened with the audit committee where, suddenly it's 5 members and 4 are gone. So we need to think about just how that
well,
process
that shouldn't
works.
happen.
I did.
Ethics
If-
committee.
Already 3 years.
Yeah.
If you have staggered
So
terms.
I know that work's been already
Yeah.
done by a number of you. I don't want to repeat it. But perhaps, Angela and Jen, because I know the bulk of the work has been done by each of you. If you can just communicate with one another and come up with a.
And I think we should also agree to, excluding the selectmen right now, to also examine the clerk and the treasurer.
In terms of elected
To
extension.
go to 2 to 4. Yeah,
That's a big change.
because I think it hasn't,
That's a
clerk
reach.
discussion,
That's a
That's
big
rich.
change.
Yeah.
That's a big discussion. I think it's a different discussion because one issue that we will need to discuss as a group is whether those 2 positions should be elected or appointed.
but
And that
either way,
kind of
they
comes-
should go to 4.
That kind of comes first, I think.
No, it doesn't.
I think no matter what, if they're appointed or elected, I think having someone in those roles, as we've heard by the value of those roles and some of their functions from Claudia now, and finally we've got Andrew. I mean, having someone for 4 years either way is important, in my viewpoint.
But the same might be true of the selectmen.
Yeah.
And we can
exactly.
discuss the selectmen too.
I suggest though, separating out the elected officials versus the appointed officials and dealing with the terms first for the boards and commissions. I think that's going to be simpler, quicker and easier.
Start there.
Agreed.
Good first step.
All right.
Good first step. Okay, we have a meeting in 2 weeks. I'm going to be in London next week. So unable to try to stick in another one. And so we'll be
So
meeting
it's the
and
24th after 2 weeks, right?
whatever is 2 weeks
is that
from
what you
today,
sent
forgive
us?
me.
I think you sent us
It's the
that.
24th, I believe.
17th, St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, it is.
And then you
That
added
is-
the 24th.
And we added the
Take it.
24th. Yeah. So no, we're sticking with those
We're
2 days.
staying with that? All right.
It's my husband's birthday on the 17th, but I'm going to be with you all.
17th,
So,
17th and the
Probably
24th.
cheaper.
yes,
Thank you.
and the 31st. Okay,
You
so
just
3
gotta go
weeks
down
in a
to the
row.
Nearest pub.
Yeah, exactly. 3 weeks in a row, 17th, 24th, and 31st. Are there any other individuals or groups that we have not chatted with? I know we still have the,
Conservation
Yeah,
Commission.
right.
So I actually have a new angle to how to get to them again.
Okay.
I'm not gonna
Okay.
crash their meeting.
okay,
did
but
that
I don't
last
think
time.
any other.
Have we
Yeah,
invited
Received a
them?
call from Wendy
Yeah,
Fogg.
yeah.
Oh,
EMS.
tell me about it.
Jennifer?
Yes, sir.
Did you hear from Wendy Frog in the EMS
I think-
commission? She was
I
saying
don't
she was
think
gonna
she
reach
came
out.
in
She
for
wanted
her
to,
commission. I
okay,
think she
I will
went
ping
to-
her again.
Okay,
But-
so we have a number of them will
Everybody's
meet
trying
at
to
the
beat
group
them up.
level. Yes, Bill.
Have we had the first selectman come in to the committee?
She hasn't come to the full commission. She's come to group one,
Three.
group
Three.
three. Excuse
Who are we
me.
talking?
2, 3?
The first selectman. came
Oh,
to
yeah,
group
no,
three.
they all
And-
did.
and it's
All
and
five.
it's
All
on
five.
video.
In your group.
Yeah, all 5.
The
Okay.
Human
Board
Group
of
3.
Selectmen.
And
Yep.
Nick.
Yeah,
Yeah,
all
all
of them,
them.
Kevin.
Yep.
Yeah,
Nick.
Kevin.
Yeah.
yeah.
So
all of
let's,
Kevin, I heard, yep.
so we've tabled the items that we did not address here, although we did get down a little bit through terms. So more to discuss there. And I will send out some suggestions for the agenda items for the 3 consecutive weeks following next week.
I'd like
Okay.
to put an item on to just to map
Yes.
out the timeline for the deliverables,
Yes.
so we can hit that mark.
Absolutely. Okay, thank
Do you
you.
think there's any value in discussing the support that the town council has, or the audit committee has, or the finance committee has, or whatever, sort of a point that Andrew brought up in a different way? It has bothered me a little bit that these committees and boards, many of you have experience, don't have support. And of
You
course,
mean
we all-
clerical support or legal support or all?
or, potentially all of that.
Yeah.
It's not just any one of them. Kind of hard to do your job. You don't have a staff. Kathleen, Judy.
Sure.
You all
Well,
have much more experience, so.
I would hope that in our interviews and consultations with groups like the town council, P and Z and so forth, that if they did not feel that they had the appropriate support, they would have raised that with us. And this is an open invitation for them to, respond to that
Well,
question.
they have a support staff. Though.
Yeah,
I
they
mean,
do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whereas town council doesn't. But they would rely on my executive assistant. That wasn't ever a problem. Maybe it's become a problem, but it wasn't a problem.
So, okay. I'm sorry, I have to go give a presentation at the next event I'm
Make a
going
motion
to.
to adjourn so you can make your presentation.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor, so that was Russ Kimes, second, all in
Aye.
favor, thank you.
Hi,
Bye-bye, thank you.
Oh,
thank you all.
Out the recording.